Then his fevered, abnormal hearing caught the distant wind-borne notes. Over miles of hill and field and alley they came, but he recognized them nonetheless. The fires must be lit and the dancers must be starting in. How could he keep himself from going? What was it that had enmeshed him? Mathematics, folklore, the house, old Keziah, Brown Jenkin? And now he saw that there was a fresh rat hole in the wall near his couch. Above the distant chanting and the nearer praying of Joe Mazurowicz came another sound, a stealthy, determined scratching in the partitions. He hoped the electric lights would not go out. Then he saw the fanged, bearded little face in the rat hole, the accursed little face which he at last realized bore such a shocking, mocking resemblance to old Keziah's, and heard the faint fumbling at the door. The screaming twilight abysses flashed before him, and he felt himself helpless in the formless grasp of the iridescent bubble conjuries. Ahead raced the small kaleidoscopic polyhedron, and all through the churning void there was a heightening and acceleration of the vague tonal pattern, which seemed to foreshadow some unutterable and unendurable climax. He seemed to know what was coming. The monstrous burst of Walpurgis rhythm, in whose cosmic timbre would be concentrated all the primal, ultimate space-time seethings which lie behind the mass spheres of matter and sometimes break forth in measured reverberations that penetrate faintly to every layer of entity and give hideous significance throughout the worlds to certain dreaded periods. Hello, 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 as the people of Brood Hollow say. Welcome back to another episode of Lovecraft Sundays, because we are still in the middle of the CarnyPop DailyDrop. So, we're here to talk about Dreams in the Witch House today. And this one is another one of the novellas. It is another one which is pretty good overall. It has some really cool concepts in it. Has some really cool moments, but overall, it doesn't leave the same impression that the Dream Quest did. But we can't hold every story up to that. If you hold every single story all the way up to your favorite, well, you won't find as many things to enjoy. You can still compare them, just you can see what is good in other works. So this one is about a guy. He's a scholar in the making, as many of Lovecraft's protagonists are, as I've mentioned before. He is investigating folklore. He's investigating patterns of mathematics and how they tie into those folklore. And he has decided to take up residence in this ancient house, which is the witch house. It has rumors that circle around it about a witch spirit that is there, and a horrible little gremlin that she has, which ends up being a rat with human hands and a human face, which I love. I absolutely love that idea. I think it's just unnerving enough, you know. I think it's a little creepy, and in terms of having like a witch, it's great to have the witch have a familiar, you know what I mean? So I absolutely love that about it. The main thrust of this story is that while he is in this house, he starts getting a fever, and while he has the fever, he starts having these voyages. These, like, they're dreams, but he's not moving through the dream world. That's made pretty clear, I'm pretty sure. But he is having these, like, visions where he sees things from beyond the veil. He starts to interact with living bubbles and strange-shaped polyhedrons with their own will out in unknown space. And eventually he ends up at a witch's, like, ritual. He keeps being visited by this witch and eventually brought forth, and then he signs this black book, and he knows that it's not good at all. And he's just trying to deal with all of this and deal with stuff in the real world, because a lot of people don't believe him, but some people are starting to believe some of it, and there's a drunkard who really, really is scared for his soul, who's kind of in a weird way, he's a voice of reason in this, because he wants nothing to do with it from almost the beginning. Whereas this theme of morbid curiosity getting in the way of living and managing to survive is a common thing in Lovecraft's work. And the protagonist of this story is no different. I'd like to take a second, because I don't have too much to say on this one. Not too much. I would like to take a second to talk about why the character names are not coming up in these vlogs. It's because, with the exception of a few, very few, the protagonists of Lovecraft's work don't leave that much of an impression. Usually the one that leaves the impression is the one doing the horrible act or discovering the horrible act. There are a few times when the narrator himself is actually really important and really leaves an impression, and leaves an impression as a character in and of themselves. But those are few and far between, and mostly Lovecraft has a more zoomed out perspective of the situation, even when the story is written from first person. Because most of the people that he writes in first person are scientists and doctors and people who study the occult, and they're all people that have this zoomed out perspective that goes into the writing style. So I just wanted to note that, because you will notice that throughout these vlogs, and as they continue to go, I can remember details, I can put all of the events forth very, very cleanly. But holding on to the character name is especially difficult. I already have a little bit of difficulty retaining names sometimes. It's definitely a fault of mine, but I really have it when I'm dealing with Lovecraft, because I don't necessarily remember the person so much as I remember what happened to them. And I think that that's where his strengths lie. This story in particular, I think that it has a really good slow build-up to the dreams getting crazier and crazier until he's really taken on these journeys in these extra-dimensional spaces. Something about this, though, is that I think that the climax of this is much weaker than certain other stories that Lovecraft has done. On a whole, I would say that Dreams from the Witch House doesn't have the same level of punch that some of the other stories do. It's an okay one, but the resolution kind of drops off. There's a moment where he gets away from the witch in the other world, and then there's a moment where the problems come to him, But Lovecraft tries to pull the we don't see it all thing, and it doesn't quite work, and there's a little bit too much falling action, but overall, there's also some things that are really cool, like they eventually find, in the aftermath, they find the skeleton of the rat, and the rat has a human face and human fingers. And that's kind of Lovecraft's cue in to say that, oh no, it's all real, don't think this is a fever dream, because Lovecraft doesn't want you to think that it's all just a story and you can go away at the end, He doesn't want that in the story, and I think that the story would be cheapened if there was that ambiguity, because that's not what it's going for. It's going for the reality of these horrible things from beyond the veil and beyond our understanding. In terms of interacting with the witch archetype, Lovecraft doesn't do it too much, and when he does it on a very basic level usually. So there isn't a lot to dig into in terms of the role of the witch itself, except that it is a much more understandable magical threat, which is then confounded by the way that it has to... all of this passes through other dimensions to find higher powers that be. But it's very evident that it's of the time. The witch is not the ultimate evil, and therefore there is something stronger than her, and she is not given any sympathizing traits. So, again, be prepared for that. There's nothing revolutionary going on with the witch archetype here by far. But overall, I think that Dreams at the Witch House is worth it to read if you're going for all of them, and even worth it to read if you're going for a lot of them. But if you're just trying to pick the best ones, it's possible you could skip this one without missing out on too much. Because I think that a lot of the ideas that are done in this are done better elsewhere. But they're never done in this specific combination ever again in his work. I'm pretty sure. So, this seems like a short one, but I think that's kind of okay. And that's really all I have to say about Dreams in the Witch House. So, this is CarnyPop, signing off. Bye.